Crazy reaction from across the country as the field of 48 has been revealed for the men's soccer tournament. Let's get into it. What do you got for me, Maria?
I mean, yeah, first of all, crazy day. Everybody's got opinions, but we are here to talk about what the committee has decided for this 48-team bracket, the Division I men's soccer tournament. It's a single elimination tournament for anybody who doesn't know. Top 16 teams were seeded, and they all receive a first-round bye, which also gives them the opportunity to host not only the second round, but also potentially, if they make it, to the quarterfinals. We've got number 1 overall seed Ohio State. They have a 1-loss record, 14-1-3, and they just won the regular season and the tournament in the Big Ten. They're a really strong contender, and we're going to see them up in that upper left quadrant of the bracket. We're going to go through the bracket a little bit later. But then at number 2, Andrew, who do we have?
We have the Pitt Panthers, a team that was probably the best team for the majority of the season out of the ACC. I don't think anyone would tell you otherwise that the ACC was the best conference this season. The Panthers did finish with 5 losses in the ACC. Lost fairly early, I think the quarterfinals of the conference tournament, but they still are the 2 seeds. Some very impressive wins this season. One of those wins over the number 3 seed, the Denver Pioneers, up there in the top right region. A lot of people jumping that Denver got this 3 seed despite not winning a Summit League championship. They did lose a pair of games to Kansas City this year, most recently this Saturday at home in that Summit League championship game, but they did also beat the Roos. And when you look at what Coach Jamie Franks' squad did in their out-of-conference schedule, they started their first 6 games of the year on the road. Games against Stanford, games against UCLA, just really tough opponents, and they showed that they are one of the best teams in the country, and that is why I believe they are one of those top 3, 4 seeds in the country. And why don't you tell us who the 4th is, Maria?
Number 4, we have Georgetown. They've got an 11-4-5 ties record, which is a lot, but as we know this season, they was no more overtime in regular season. So hopefully we can knock out a few more of those ties in the postseason, which we know goes to sudden death in overtime. But yeah, they're the 2019 national champs. They won the Big East tournament. They've got 11 shutouts this season, which is a lot. And they've got a .745 goals against average, which is 6th in the nation. So they're a great defensive team and have proven that they can win against top tier teams as well.
Premier defensively, no doubt about it. That's what the Hoyas do best. And last year, kind of a little bit of a disappointing NCAA tournament situation for them. I believe they were the same 4 seed, didn't make the run that most people did expect for them. And it'll be interesting to see if they're able to do that this time around. The comments have been absolutely electric. I've seen the comments all day long, especially on Instagram and Twitter. I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't get to this at this point, especially from what I'm seeing in the comments. West Virginia. Everyone wants to talk about West Virginia. West Virginia was a team that was ranked top 10 nationally for a lot of the year. I believe they spent 3 weeks at number 1. They won the Sun Belt regular season championship. They won the Sun Belt postseason championship yesterday after going through a full 90 minutes plus 2 overtimes with Marshall and then 1 in PKs. That doesn't count as a win for your RPI. They were the 16th ranked RPI squad. So a lot of people are upset and frustrated that West Virginia is not one of those top 16 seeds. I've been accused of being like a West Virginia homer or a West Virginia bias. I have no affiliation to the state of West Virginia. But I will say this. I was shocked originally when I didn't see them in the top 16. But when you really break down the bracket, where they sit is kind of nice. If they advance, they would play Virginia in the second round. They're the seeded team with the most amount of losses. Virginia had 6 losses. Marshall is on the other side, and that's what a lot of the West Virginia fans are frustrated about. Marshall could see North Carolina in the second round, and North Carolina is the team that was 1 game away from making it to the College Cup last year. I understand that they're frustrated. It's not the worst draw. It's not the worst draw.
Yeah, I think one thing to also consider here is this first round, you're not allowed to play teams from your conference. So when the committee is making these selections and deciding these matchups, they are taking that into consideration. So it's not so black and white. You know, if there's a few teams that are bubble teams that may or may not get seeded, that could be something that changes it. It could not be, but it is something to also remember that they had already clinched their spot. They were going to be in the tournament. And so we can't speak for the committee, but we have to respect what they did choose. And like you said, different parts of this bracket seem a bit tougher to me than other parts. And West Virginia, I think, got maybe an easier ride, but we'll see.
I definitely think that this year made it even harder with conference realignment, because you look at a team like Pittsburgh, clearly great in the ACC, but then they end up with 5 losses, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so many losses. But when you consider that they're playing the gauntlet of the schedule that they're playing, 5 losses isn't that crazy. And I feel like that's where West Virginia kind of got in a situation where they didn't have any quad 1 wins. They did have 10 NCAA tournament games. A lot of people will talk about the ties. But again, I'd be okay with where they sit in the bracket. I don't think it's the worst spot for Coach Dan Stratford's squad.
It's funny, we're talking about them right now, and the West Virginia men's soccer just joined the live. So hey guys, welcome on. We were just talking about where you are in the bracket, and we'll be chatting a bit more about that later on. But moving kind of down through what we're going to talk about here, we wanted to talk about first-time appearances, but fortunately, it's pretty incredible that there's no first-time appearances here. But we will point out or shout out Evansville, who just won the Missouri Valley Conference, and they're in for the first time since 1996, and they've got UMass first.
Yeah, just a wild run for the Aces, beating the top 2 teams in the conference tournament, avenging regular season losses, and then they play Bowling Green and get that automatic bid. 8-6-3 out of Missouri Valley. I love anytime we have like some out of the box team names. Aces is awesome for me. Evansville Aces. I love what they did, and not to get too far ahead of myself, but full bracket predictions coming out tomorrow. Evansville hangs a W in my bracket.
Okay. So I thought about, since we don't have any first-time appearances in the tournament, we could maybe talk about potential first-time College Cup appearances, which I've got a few here. There's a team that I've been talking about since the beginning of the season, posted about it on NCAA.com, but Hofstra, they've never been to the College Cup, and I think they've got a great squad put together this year. They could make it. They're seeded this tournament. They're the number 7 seed. And then we've also got Western Michigan. I already saw some stuff in the chat about them. We know that they're capable of making a deep run, as they did last season, into the NCAA tournament. And then this season, again, unranked. But they haven't made a College Cup appearance. And this could, I mean, they're in a tough spot in the bracket, but this could be a year that they make first-time appearance. Another one is also Vermont. What are you thinking about Vermont?
Mount's interesting spot in the bracket. I want to just quickly go back to the 2 you just mentioned, Hofstra and remind me quickly.
Western Michigan.
Hofstra and Western Michigan. Last year, both of those teams lost to rivals, Duke and UNC, in PKs. Both of them, I believe. Oh, Western Michigan lost to, Notre Dame. But really good runs last year, and then losing in PKs. We know how PKs go. That's kind of a toss-up. So these teams aren't teams that are not accustomed to winning NCAA tournament games. Yes, like you said, they've not appeared as one of those last 4 standing, but like you said, could be interesting. This could be one of their years. Vermont is, where are they, on the left side of the bracket?
No. Looks like it. They are on
right side of the bracket. Right. They get Iona. And then there you go. Right in the second round there, if they're able to advance, they would play Hofstra. So one of your teams right away won't be making a College Cup run. But, yeah, I like those 3 as possibilities. I think there are some other teams that haven't won national championships that we could see in that final set of teams in Cary, North Carolina in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure if those teams that you just mentioned have the shakeout in the bracket that it works out for them, but we'll see.
We will see. And we've got first round games starting this Thursday with second round on Sunday. So make sure to stay tuned. We'll be covering it everywhere. Anything NCAA soccer. So that takes me into the biggest storylines going into this tournament. I forgot to mention it earlier, but let's go back to Ohio State. They're having a bit of a comeback season, you could say. Last season, they had a 6-6-6 record. losing to PKs to Penn State last season, the Big Ten semis, and just getting knocked out there. That was the first time they hadn't been into the tournament in a very long time. And then this season, they've been on fire. Their only loss has been to UCLA, who they could face coming up in the third round. So I'm interested because this kind of storyline with Ohio State is similar to the Duke women's team having this comeback season, having one loss, throughout the regular season and looking to make a deep run into the tournament. The only thing with Ohio State being, as we discussed, they've got a tough shake in that part of the bracket.
And in the women's game, we've seen it a lot recently where the number one overall seed makes a run right to the national championship. That really hasn't happened much on the men's side of things. 2019 was the last time that a number one seed made it to the College Cup, and that was Virginia. They ultimately lost to Georgetown. If you go all the way back, I believe it was 2011, UNC was the number one overall seed. That's the last team to win the College Cup as the top seed. Yes, obviously, you start the year and I told you, hey, you guys are going to be the number one seed in the NCAA tournament. You're like, oh, yeah, why would we not sign up for that? But it's not as easy as it sounds, and I don't think it'll be a very easy task for Ohio State. And while you mentioned the fact that they didn't make the tournament last year and they are a mainstay in this field of 48, same thing goes for the winningest college program of all time. St. Louis wasn't in this field last year. They're back. And same thing goes for Maryland. Maryland is the team that we see year in, year out in the NCAA tournament. They didn't get in last year. They're back. It's good to see those teams that really are a staple in this game back in the big stage.
For sure. So going into a few more storylines, kind of looking at this field and looking how they got here. I loved watching all those conference championships this past weekend. One of my favorite moments was Kansas City beating Denver in the Summit League. It was like the last 10 or 13 seconds, I believe, corner kick, one-touch finish into the goal. They earned their first berth into the NCAA since 2008, sorry. So 16 years for them. So I love a storybook finish like that, and we'll see how they do here going into the tournament. But that was one of my favorite moments to get teams into the NCAA tournament.
And you know me, I love great names. How about the Roos? Can't get more unique than that. Not the Kangaroos, just the Roos there in Kansas City. Iona making their second NCAA tournament, beating Rider 1-0 in overtime for the Metro Atlantic Championship. Bautista Rossi with that golden goal. Gotta love the golden goals. They were fun to watch. Charlotte was another one in the American Athletic Conference Championship game. Golden goal for Brigham Larson, over FIU. And then lastly for me, PKs, it was interesting watching that go 8 deep, Wake and Clemson, and then watching their goalkeeper jump up in the stands and celebrate with all the fans there in Cary. Not a far drive for the Wake Forest fans. So that was fun, and man, we could see that for a third time this season. Wake Forest and Clemson, 8-9 matchup in the same region.
Oh, yeah. And a fun fact about Wake Forest is that they last won a national title in 2007, and since then have been seeded every single year. So they kind of got this tradition of being seeded going, and we'll see if they're able to get a second national title.
I got something a little bit later about that 2007 Wake Forest team and how that relates to my national championship pick this year.
Okay. Question in the chat there, is this for the men's tournament? Yes, if you are joining us recently, we're going over the just released bracket for the D1 men's soccer tournament. It was released earlier today, and we're breaking down all the teams and players and matchups you need to watch out for. So that brings me to the players. We've got a lot of players doing great things, but these were a few standouts for me. We spoke about them earlier, but I've got the goalkeeper Isaac Nami.
Correct.
He's completed his 26th career shutout and is one away from breaking the program record.
Yeah, Denver was a team last year that was not healthy. He was not a part of the tournament team last year. He was the Summit League goalkeeper of the year this year. He was unhealthy for their win over LIU Brooklyn, and then they lost in the second round. This year, Denver's healthy. Denver's dangerous. I love that you shouted him out. That wouldn't have been the number one person I shouted out on the team. I would say Sam Bassett. He's top 5 in the nation in assists. He is as dangerous as they come with the ball at his feet. But Isaac is also phenomenal in that. Coach Jamie Franks is one of the great rising young coaches in the game. I really do think that Denver is poised to make a deep push in this year's tournament. And I love that you shouted out their goalkeeper. I'm going to shout out the guy that leads the nation in goals, and it's not particularly close. It's really not particularly close. He's got 6 on the next closest person in the standings, and that's Akron's Emil Jaskalainen. It's crazy to see LIU Brooklyn in the field because he transferred from LIU Brooklyn last year. You replaced the leading scorer in the country, and he got back in. It's a shame that they're on opposite sides of the bracket. It'd be really fun to see Emil face off against his former team. Crazier things have happened, but you never know. And then the other one that I wanted to say with Ohio State, we mentioned them a couple times. Boy, if you haven't seen Michael Adedukin with the ball, it's crazy that he could be faster when possessing the ball than without the ball at his feet. He is phenomenal, one of the most electrifying players that we have in our game, and those would be the top 2 that I would say I would have my eyes on.
Yeah, no, going back to Akron's Jaskalainen. He
yeah.
He totals, not only does he have 23 goals, but he also has 7 assists, totaling 53 points for the Zips. Yeah. And he also leads the nation in game winners. So not only is he scoring a lot of goals, but he's scoring them in big moments with 6 game winners. And like you said, I think the next highest goal scorer is 17. So he's got a lot on them. But yeah, Akron's one to watch. We can talk about them later, but I've got Akron as one to watch as well. They beat Georgetown 1-0 in late September before obviously losing to them more recently in the Big East semis. But, you know, they've got a win on Georgetown, and that's a top-seeded team right there. The other player I've got highlighted here, who I think it's important to highlight players doing well just in their conference. You know, a lot of times we talk about the nation-leading goal scorers, but we also have to shine light on those who are making a name for themselves within their conference and potentially eventually nationally. But we've got Alec Hughes from UMass. He has 3-peat A10 Offensive Player of the Year, and he's broken the scoring record at his program there in Massachusetts. And they have their first 10-win season since 2017. So that's another team that they're winning more than usual. They've got players standing out for 3 years now in a row. So maybe this could be the year that they really break out.
NCAA Digital Player of the Week earlier this year, Alec Hughes. So I like that he's in there. There are a ton of guys. If you look at the stats page on NCAA.com, top 10 in goals and assists, there are maybe 2 people that aren't in this tournament. We are loaded with the best people in the country in this field of 48. I guess I'll throw one more in there from the 2 seed Pitt Panthers. Guy Feitosa, the senior center attacking mid, if you will. He is really great at distributing to the pieces around him. That's Luis Samcal. That's Casper Grenning. They have really great wings and really great forwards. And Guy Feitosa does a great job of providing them with great passes into space and goal-scoring opportunities. You may remember, Maria, the last time we talked about the top 16 reveal, I hinted to the people, you should go check out Guy's Instagram page. He does game breakdowns on his Instagram page where he kind of highlights the great plays that his teammates are making, sometimes really highlights what the other team did well to counter this really quality Pitt team this year. It's been great content all season, so hopefully Guy doesn't take my job eventually.
Watch out, he's graduating soon. He might be looking for jobs. That's
I'm
amazing.
sure he'll be playing soccer and doing a little bit better.
You've got a few years. Yeah. But you mentioned that top 16 reveal, so I thought I'd mention this as well. It was interesting to see that there was a handful of teams who were ranked in the top 16, but then were not ranked or not seeded come tournament time. And one of those is West Virginia, which we've talked about extensively, and in the chat they've talked about extensively. But it is interesting. They were ranked number 12 in that top 16 reveal, but it does show that the back end of the season can really move those rankings around and ultimately decide those seeds. 2 other teams that were seeded in that top 16 reveal were Western Michigan and Cornell, who are both in the tournament, but were not receiving seeds.
You look at what Western Michigan was at that point. They were the lone remaining undefeated team left in the country. They've lost 2 games since then. It makes a little bit of sense they're not in that top 16. West Virginia has 1 loss since then, and it's to the 5 seed Dayton. So it's not like they went out in the last couple of weeks and laid an egg. But hey, again, spin zone Mountaineers fans, you got a nice draw there in that part of the bracket. I understand you're frustrated. Positive vibes. Positive vibes.
Yes, positive vibes. And we also mentioned in that top 16 reveal that Clemson was number 16, I believe. They were right on the edge, but then they ended up making it in, seated at number 9. So another team that mid-season we were could be a toss-up, but they kind of locked in these past few games.
That kind of takes me back to Ohio State. Yes, you're fired up to get the number 1 overall seed. Boy, I would not want to see the defending champs in my bracket. They've won 2 national championships in the last 3 years. Mike Noonan is as good as anybody in the country as the head coach for the Clemson Tigers. They have the experience. Yeah, that's a scary bracket in the top left.
Definitely is. So that takes me to our sleeper teams, 1-loss teams, flying under the radar teams. I have Cinderella team on there, but I don't think there's – well, we'll see. Do you have a Cinderella team?
Well, I just say this. The 1-loss thing is kind of bizarre because we only really have 3 1-loss teams. That's Ohio State, that's Marshall, and that's West Virginia. We've talked enough about West Virginia. I think Marshall is really good, but another situation where they could see UNC in the second round. If they advance, then they could see Dayton. If they advance, they could see Georgetown. So that's a gauntlet. And then obviously we've talked about Ohio State as well. Cinderella teams, yeah, I got a Cinderella team for you.
Okay.
I'm not saying that we're going to have Oregon State last year, an unseeded team, make a run to the College Cup, but I got one that's not going to play a home game at all, and that's Seattle University. I like the Redbirds. I think that they are really good defensively. I think that they can get exciting offensively. I think that they have a nice in-state rivalry there to start off against Washington. They did lose to Washington earlier this year, but I like the way that the Redbirds are trending. I'm taking Seattle U to win not 1, but 2 games in this here tournament.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was caught up with you too, but I think I'm going to go with Kansas City. I spoke about them a bit earlier, but they won the Summit League, beat Denver, their first NCAA appearance since 2008. And not only that, but also they have the 4th highest goals against average. They're in the mix with all of the highest seeds. If you look at the rankings tab again, the goals against average or the scoring offense percentage, you've got Duke, Dayton, Clemson, Kansas City, and then Ohio State underneath them. So this, they're right there up in the mix as far as offense and goal scoring opportunities go. They've got a 2.63, so almost 3 goals per game. And also I chose them as a Cinderella team because they're in this part of the bracket where they've got St. Louis as their first matchup. They've got Missouri State, 15 seed, as their second matchup. I could see them making a run to the 3rd round, maybe taking on Pitt, maybe beating Pitt, So I've got Kansas City as for sure a Cinderella team to watch. The other Cinderella team, which I didn't want to call them that, but I think they're, an unseeded team that could make a deep run, is West Virginia. But they're not really Cinderella. They're more like they've got the ball gown on. They just need the tiara.
That slipper doesn't fit. Their foot's too big for that slipper. They're not a Cinderella team, especially when you consider what they did last year as the 5 seed, making a run all the way to the College Cup for the first time. I understand exactly what your mindset is. They're unseeded. I don't know if they fit that terminology in this particular situation, but I'm with you. They're going to make a run.
I'm excited to see how this kind of ranking, seeding, translates into their game, because maybe they're a little bit, they've got a little chip on their shoulder now. They've got something to prove. This is definitely a team that has a lot of team spirit and personality. So if anything, they'll take this and turn it into a positive.
I listened to Coach Stratford talk with the media today after that, and he said all the right things. He said that obviously they are frustrated. They were 16th in RPI, but at the same time, they did draw a lot. And at the end of the day, they have the opportunity to go out there and prove everybody wrong and try and win some games and say, hey, we should have been seeded, and now you guys know why.
Yeah. It's not a 1-loss team, but it's a 2-loss team, which is pretty close. But under the radar team is the Dayton Flyers. They're seeded fifth, so not really that under the radar. But out of their 10 goal scorers, they've got 5 of them have more than 6 goals this season. They led the Atlantic 10 in scoring percentage with 51 goals on the season, letting in just 18, which averaged a 2.8 goals against average. And they are also second in the nation behind Duke.
Martin Bakken, another one of those Dayton Flyers, previously an NCAA Digital Player of the Week this year. I really like the Dayton Flyers, a 2-loss team. When you said under the radar 2-loss team, I thought you were going somewhere else because the Flyers are ranked 5th, but I do think that they are poised to be in a situation to get – I picked that bracket to be chalk. I have them playing Georgetown with an opportunity to get to carry. There it is. You see? Hope Halleck. Shout out you. That took me right where I was going. The 2-loss team that I'm watching is San Diego. It was like last week in the coaches poll that San Diego was 3. They don't play a postseason tournament in the West Coast Conference. I don't think that did them any favors, kind of sitting on the sidelines while all these other teams were doing big things and winning championships. San Diego's really good. Sammy Kanan is premier at the top of their formation. I think that San Diego is that 2-loss team that I'm saying they're gonna win a game. They're gonna win a game. They're gonna play Duke in the second round. That's a tough one. I think if you have to fly across the country in 4 days and then go play a really good Duke team, that might be a little bit challenging, but I do think San Diego is good enough to play with just about anybody in the country, and they prove that all year long. At the end of the day, Maria, the goal is to win games, and San Diego only lost 2.
That is true. That is true. And what was the quote from Ryan Campbell?
Oh, well, that's about saves, and I would say that San Diego's probably like scoring more goals than they're like trying to defend. But yeah, if you don't give up any goals, you literally can't lose. It's a fact.
I just love that.
Yeah.
I think that's a new mantra for everybody.
There you go.
All right, so this brings us kind of analyze the bracket, the Division I men's soccer bracket that was released today. I kind of want to break it down by quadrants. We've been hinting at which ones we think are hardest, easiest, but we might as well just break it down. Which part of the bracket has the easiest route? We can start there. I'm going bottom right. You've got the best seed is number 2, Pittsburgh, but like we said, that can be a toss-up. They might have Cornell their first round, but we've got a team like Kansas City that could beat St. Louis and Missouri State. So I think that is kind of, out of all of them, which none of them are easy, is a part of the quadrant that, we might have some surprises there.
I'm with you there. I think the bottom right quadrant shapes up incredibly well for the Pitt Panthers. I was a little bit shocked that they got the 2 seed after losing early in that ACC tournament. But when you look at what they did in the regular season, it's clear that the committee prioritized what you did in the regular season. Some of those conference champs didn't get the benefit of the doubt. Kansas City won that championship, but Denver's the 3 seed. So it really mattered what you did in the regular season, and I think that's why Pitt is in this bracket, and it's a bracket that we think is pretty winnable. Duke, Hofstra, Missouri State, those are the other 3 ranked teams. We'll see, but I am with you that I think that is the easiest bracket in this year's Field of 48.
Yeah, and that takes us to the hardest bracket, which I think, not the hardest bracket, but the hardest part of the bracket, which I think we both agree on, that top left quadrant. You've got Ohio State, Stanford, Clemson, 2-time champions. You've got Wake Forest in there, who's looking for 3 times, sorry. But
2 in the last 3, though.
Right
2 in recent memory, yeah.
And so that's a tough quadrant, especially for those unseeded teams to try and make any movement.
UCLA is a team that you could have told me had College Cup aspirations, and I'd say, yeah, they absolutely could. They beat quality opponents throughout the season. They're going to have to play Stanford in the second round there. It's interesting that those 2 teams haven't faced off this year. Normally, that was a Pac-12 rivalry that we saw every single season. Now, UCLA in the Big Ten, Stanford in the ACC. It'd be cool to see them in the second round. But Maryland's another one where if you told me, Maryland could make a run to the College Cup before I looked at this bracket, I would agree with you. Ohio State, UCLA, Stanford, Maryland, Clemson, Wake Forest, all in the same bracket. Do you want to tell me who'd you pick there? Or are we going to wait on that?
straight into it. I've got Ohio State playing Clemson in the quarterfinal, but I
As
think,
do I.
and then I think, I don't know, I kind of tossed a coin here, honestly, because you don't. It could go either way, but I've got Ohio State taking that, with their 1 seed and advancing to the College Cup.
I was right there with you. That's my matchup. But I told you earlier that the last time a number 1 seed made it to the College Cup was 2019. I don't think history's on Ohio State's side. I really like Ohio State. But I think this draw is brutal. I think Stanford's going to give them everything they've got. And then Clemson or Wake Forest, I do think it's going to be Clemson. And I wouldn't want to play Clemson if I was anybody. So I'm with you there. That's what I had in the top left. Bottom left, I already told you this too. I had chalk. I have Dayton playing Georgetown, and I'm sticking with the Hoyas, the Big East champs, against the A10 champs. That was another thing I heard from Coach Stratford. He called the Sun Belt the 4th best conference in the country. And then I was thinking, okay, ACC, Big Ten, Big East, the 3rd best conference in the country. That's what I'm going to go and say. And Georgetown was the champs of the Big East. I think that Georgetown will get back to the College Cup for the first time since 2021. They were the 2019 national champs.
Okay, well, I think Sunbelt is top 3. I'm from Sunbelt, so always got to go for them. But yeah, bottom left, I've got also Dayton in the quarterfinals playing Marshall, but I've got Marshall going back to the College Cup because, we'll reveal it in a little bit, but I've got a great matchup for my College Cup finals. That is
Sunbelt,
a repeat.
you Sunbelt girl, you.
So yeah, I've got like I said, Dayton, I said Dayton, Marshall in the quarterfinals, but I've got Marshall advancing from that bottom left. But I will go back just really quick to that top left. You mentioned Clemson. You have Clemson winning. Whoever wins that, I'm trying to understand, is it an advantage? Like, oh, they've played all the hardest teams and, but I'm also like, they're going to be dead.
Yeah.
Those are going to be, every single one of those games are going to be battles. So are they going to make it to the College Cup and, be battling injuries, tiredness, fatigue? Or is it more like, we've made it through the gauntlet and now we're ready for whatever is going to hit us?
When I was looking at the 2023 bracket earlier today as we were breaking this stuff down, I think that's what Notre Dame ran into. Just so many brutally long games, PKs against Western Michigan, and then ultimately they kind of ran out of gas there at the end against Clemson. And like you said, maybe that could be the case for Clemson or Ohio State or Stanford or whoever the heck comes out of that top left region. Top right, who you got?
I've got quarterfinals, West Virginia. Wait, are we looking at top right?
Right.
Yeah,
You're right.
West Virginia, Indiana.
Ooh,
I think that would be a great matchup, but I've got West Virginia. Like I said, I think they're coming into this with something to prove, a bit of a chip on their shoulder just because of this seeding. But they've also proven, they've got great goal scorers in Sergio Ors Navarro. They've also got great set piece taker in Simon Carlson. And I just got great faith in them. They're my Cinderella, but not Cinderella team as far as unseeded teams making a deep run. It's looked like we've got some Hoosier fans in the chat. So give us your predictions, guys, for College Cup. Who are your top 4 teams? That was my quarterfinal there. What about you, Andrew? Top right.
Man, I see the Indiana fans in the chat, and they're going to be mad at me, Maria. I listened to Coach Yeagley, and he was fired up on the bracket reveal that they called Bloomington Titletown, which is cool. They are, of late, the premier program in college soccer. We look at St. Louis. Most of their championships came long before Maria and I were even thought of in this world. Indiana, on the other hand, they've won more recently and more dominantly. I do think that it's going to be tough for them to go on the road to Denver. Man, I guarantee you it's not going to be above freezing, and I think there'll be a pretty good chance that there's going to be some snow on the ground out there in the Mile High City. I think that bodes well for Jamie Franks' group. That's one of the best coaching matchups that we could see in the tournament in Jamie Franks versus Todd Yeagley. 2 of the best. I'm taking Denver to win that matchup, and I think Denver then hosts West Virginia. Same pick as you on the bottom part of that bracket. I'm sticking with the Pioneers, though. I do really think that what they did early this season in their non-conference schedule will prepare them for what they're going to face in this NCAA tournament. And I think Denver is going back to the College Cup.
All right. So that takes us
Tommy
to
Mahalik's mad at me. I see it already. Shoot. Sorry,
these
Tommy.
are just predictions.
It's all love.
We do not know the answers, but you got to choose. You got to choose. You got to make your predictions, so then at the end of the tournament, you can be happy and excited.
One team's going to be happy with us. There's going to be 48 teams that are mad at us.
Yeah.
It's all love, like I said.
Okay, so bottom right of the bracket, I was talking about Hofstra earlier. They've never made it to the College Cup, and this season they've got a lot of experience, a lot of transfers, international players, different playing styles there on that team. So I've got them making it to the quarterfinal against Pitt. There we go. So I've got Hofstra, Pitt, quarterfinal, but I'm just a sucker for lower seeded teams making it far, and I would love to see Hofstra make it to the College Cup for the first time. So yeah, I've got Hofstra, West Virginia, Ohio State, Marshall in the Final Four in the College Cup.
My bottom right, I have a different pick. I picked Duke to beat Hofstra. I think Coach Kerr's group is really prepared for this moment. His son is top 5 in the nation in assists for the Blue Devils. Olfer Bjornsson, top 5 in goals scored. They also have a phenomenal transfer in Adam Luckhurst from South Carolina that's provided them phenomenal boost off the bench. I think they will be able to take down Hofstra on the road. But then, ironically enough, that would be an ACC matchup, and that ACC matchup did not happen this year. Duke did not play Pitt. I'm taking Pitt. I'm taking Pitt to get into the College Cup. I picked 2 and 3 on that right side of the bracket. I've got 9 and 4 on the left side of the bracket. So we're fairly similar but fairly different. Let's hear what you have playing out in Cary, North Carolina for us, Maria.
Cary, North Carolina, we might have Ohio State playing Marshall winning. Then we've got West Virginia, Hofstra, West Virginia winning, and then an ultimate Sun Belt battle in the finals. Every time they've played each other this season, it's been such an amazing turnout, and I have 100% confidence that those fans will travel to Cary. They would do anything for that team. So I could see the stands being filled and that just being such a title matchup between two Sun Belt giants, and the Sun Belt just really, finally getting maybe some respect that it deserves. So
West Virginia finally getting some respect that it deserves. The center of the college soccer universe, according to Maria Howell. That would be quite something. The Mountain State Derby as a national championship game. Boy, I don't think Cary can handle it. Those fans would be going at it. It would be a blast. We saw what happened yesterday in Morgantown, an awesome setting at Dick Gillespie Stadium. PKs. It was fun. I'm not going to agree with you because obviously I didn't pick West Virginia or Marshall to make it to my College Cup. I have Clemson beating Georgetown. They're going to be back in a national championship again. I vividly remember this, Maria. We ran onto the field after that championship last year, and Joran Gerbet, one of the best midfielders in the country, right there for Clemson. I remember him dropping to his knees, and I saw the look in his eyes. And then yesterday, I was watching that PK shootout, and Wake Forest wins, and they go celebrate. And then the camera cuts to Joran Gerbet, and the look in his eyes was scary. It was completely different, but it was scary. I think that dude's on a mission. I think he's going to will them back to another opportunity to play for a national championship, and they're going to play Pitt. I think Pitt is going to beat Denver for the second time this year. They beat them at home earlier this season, 2-0. It was a brutal stretch for Denver. I believe they had 3 games in 7 or 8 days, and Pittsburgh was the last of them. I do think that they're a great team, but I do think Pitt moves on to face Clemson, an ACC national championship for the second year in a row. And you mentioned earlier 2007 Wake Forest. Who was the head coach for Wake Forest in 2007? That was Jay Vidovich, the head coach of the Pitt Panthers. What do you think Wake Forest's seed was in 2007? They were the 2 seed. I'm saying that Vidovich wins it again as the 2 seed. The Pitt Panthers are my national champ this year in men's college soccer.
All right. Well, we will know at the end of the month and the beginning of December. We'll have an answer for everybody. So thank you, everybody, for joining on. Let's go through really quick first round matchups to watch. Like we mentioned, Division One men's soccer tournament starts on Thursday with the first round. The top 16 seeds have received a bye, and they won't play until Sunday, where they will host whoever wins these first round matchups. Who are you watching on Thursday?
Well, I already told you Seattle U is my little bit of a Cinderella team. I think that matchup against Washington, an in-state rival for a second time this year, will be really fun. I'll be excited to watch Charlotte and NC State, another in-state rivalry. Charlotte is a two-loss team. They were really good out of the American. I like what the 49ers pose. And then you talked a little bit about UMass as well as Evansville. Evansville, the Aces, UMass, the Minutemen. I'm a sucker again, Maria, for great names. There they are. That'll be a fun matchup to watch. I do think that whoever wins that game really does have the potential as a really red-hot team to make a little bit of an NCAA tournament run.
Yeah. We talked about our Cinderella teams earlier, so I've got Kansas City playing St. Louis. That'll be a great matchup. Where are they at? Western Michigan, as we know, they want to go far in the tournament again. They've got some tough matchups ahead of them if they win that first match, but they have to win the first match to get there. So they've got SIUE that first round. And then you mentioned most of mine, but I'm just excited to see West Virginia come out and just, guns blazing, hopefully, and play North Florida in that first round.
I'll say similarly, a team that I expect to come out guns blazing will be UNC. Last year, they were the 3 seed. I don't think that the Tar Heels really have too much of a leg to stand on about not being a ranked team, but I think they should be frustrated that they're in this position, and rightfully so, but I do think that that will make them come out with a little bit of an edge, similar to those West Virginia Mountaineers.
I'm sure all these teams are finding their edge right now, talking and getting ready for these games who are starting on Thursday and Sunday. We will be covering all the action on NCAA.com and on NCAA socials. You'll be seeing Andrew McDevitt's full bracket reveal tomorrow, and we'll see if we are right or if we are absolutely wrong.
I'd be happy to be wrong as long as, like my guy James_Z said, it's just going to be an exciting tournament. That's what I love about this tournament. It's incredibly unpredictable. I'm sure people will be calling us silly, maybe some meaner things about our poor picks, but that's okay. As long as it's fun, as long as it's entertaining, that's what we watch it for anyway, and it's been like that all year long. I'm sure it'll only continue with this field of 48 as we head to December 16th, Wake Med Park. I'll be there. You'll be there. Let's go.
See you in Cary.